I had schemed for 15 years, pouring out every last drop of my heart and will until I finally helped Gu Ming ascend to the imperial throne. Before he died, he dragged with him the severed heads of my maternal grandfather and my father and solemnly entered the capital palace step by step. Sip by sip, he poured the last bowl of poison down my throat. He took my whole family's lives, sacrificing Lu Rui's spirit at the 9 springs for his own sake. Clad in dragon robes, Gu Ming entered the palace triumphant. He looked at me, his body gaunt, nothing but skin and bone, and spoke softly. Because of Li Yuan, I could sit on the imperial throne. Now the time has come to fulfill the promise I made long ago. Yet Li Yuan wants to leave me, my heart is cut like a knife. I forced my eyes open with difficulty and looked at the man I had loved for half my life. His breath was as frail as silk. Please, Your Majesty, when I was 7, I and my mother were taken by villains. It was Your Majesty who saved me. I swore then to follow you for life. It was I who ordered her to be taken. I lay on the bed coughing violently, blood choking in my lungs, I could not breathe. Gu Ming smiled in a strange way, his voice was chillingly soft. Even her mother was executed by my order. Who told her things she shouldn't know? Back then I was only a powerless prince without family backing, without the emperor's favor. I wanted merely a support, someone to rely on. I never expected she would, for my sake, for the man who killed her mother, devote herself so entirely. Everything I have today is thanks to Li Yuan. I planned to hide it from her all my life, let her be a peaceful empress. And yet she killed Lu Rui. Gu Ming gently stroked my cheek. I told you then, as long as she becomes a concubine, the position of principal wife of the Eastern Palace will still be hers. Why could you not forgive her? 2 palace guards brought forward 2 boxes. When they were opened, inside were the heads of my maternal grandfather and my father. I coughed violently, blood burst from me and clogged my lungs. I couldn't breathe. Gu Ming lifted the bowl of poison and slowly poured it into my mouth. You thought I didn't know, he said. In truth, he had always known. He had always endured. He gradually added other things into her medicine, gradually replaced her people, gradually seized military power. He had been patient until this day. Li Yuan, you must die. My consciousness blurred. At the brink of death, I dimly heard Gu Ming instruct his confidant. Cut this wretched woman's body up and throw it to the dogs. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn to the very day Gu Ming returned in triumph from the northern campaign. The main army had not yet arrived, but the capital was already buzzing with the rumor that last year he had been wounded on the battlefield and saved by a peasant woman, and that love had grown between them. The Li household was frighteningly silent, even the servants, busy with tasks, deliberately avoided the courtyard where I stayed, afraid I might fly into a murderous rage. Who in the capital did not know me, Li Yuan, the only granddaughter of the Grand Commander, a rare talented woman. No young gifted man ever caught my eye, except for Crown Prince Gu Ming. Though the prince always treated the Li family daughter with coldness, I willingly offered myself up to him. Any woman who dared approach the prince would find it impossible to escape my retribution, so today the whole realm waited on tenterhooks to see the show. I looked at myself in the bronze mirror and laughed, a self-mocking sound. I, Li Yuan, could read by 3, wrote poetry at 5, mastered the classics by 7. I planned to outwit ministers, to outmaneuver princes and dukes, even to outplay emperors. I personally hoisted Gu Ming onto the 9-ranked throne, convinced I stood outside the board, holding the realm in my palm, yet from the start I had been a mere piece on Gu Ming's game. I accepted the very murderer who slew my mother as my benefactor. For him I brought ruin to my ancestral grandfather, I brought death to my father. A maid in the courtyard reminded me it was time to enter the palace for the feast. I took out the jade hairpin Gu Ming had given me and the red slip of paper stained with lipstick. Gu Ming, in this life I will make you repay blood with blood, debt with debt. This northern campaign returned in triumph. The Qian emperor rejoiced, ordering 100 tables to be set inside the palace and summoning ministers and their families to the feast. My ancestral grandfather and I sat at the emperor's right hand, a seat arranged personally by the Qian emperor, proof enough of how favored the Li household had become. Everyone knew it, the Li household was loyal and mighty. Grand Commander Li was a venerable statesman for 3 reigns, his disciples filled the court. He had sat in the commander's chair for decades unshaken. My father was a tiger among generals, commander of 300,000 troops guarding the border, keeping peace in his region. Soon the crown prince entered the hall in court robes, leading a demure young woman. Gu Ming, returned from the battlefield, wore the terrifying aura of conquest, regal as the royal house, lethal as a soldier, the same silhouette as the man who had sat the throne in my previous life. "Your subject pays respects to the emperor," he said. For a moment the Qian emperor's gaze darkened and became unreadable. Very quickly, though, he burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha, no formalities. The crown prince's victory in the northern campaign is a great merit for our realm. My heart overflows with joy. Whatever reward you seek, I will grant." Gu Ming knelt on one knee, hands clasped. "Father, during the northern campaign I was struck by an arrow in the chest. A woman named Lu Rue risked her life to save me and nursed me for 3 months until I survived. Now Lu Rue's family were killed in the chaos of war. I know I can never repay her life, so I wish to take Lu Rue as a secondary consort of the Eastern Palace. I respectfully ask Father to issue the edict for our marriage." Lu Rue knelt behind him, eyes rimmed with tears, like a startled fawn. All teasing eyes turned toward me, waiting for my move on the stage. The Qian emperor's face instantly darkened. In fury he threw down a cup and roared. "Ungrateful whelp. You already have an arranged engagement to Miss Li, only 2 months until the wedding. What place do you intend to put Miss Li in by doing this?" My ancestral grandfather raised his head toward the emperor, face unmoved. I smiled coldly inside. An emperor's heart is often cruel. Reborn now, I saw things with sharper clarity. The crown prince's position was firm, his military merits were won. The Qian emperor had begun to take notice of the power behind him. The emperor's health wavered, but he had not decided to abdicate. A living emperor does not relinquish power easily. Among the princes, Gu Ming's family was vast and had become a threat. The top seat must remain with the Li household. In recent years, the Li family's influence had grown dangerously large. The Qian emperor wished to restrain them, but the border was in turmoil and my father commanded the armies. He could not be moved. My ancestral grandfather held great authority yet did not crave power. There was no plausible pretext to impeach him. On the surface the Li household took no visible side, but I was the only granddaughter. Years ago, when Gu Ming contested the throne against the eldest and the third princes, the Li household had, in some faint way, reached out to help. The court quietly assumed the Li household supported the crown prince. This time Gu Ming deliberately presented the opportunity before the emperor. Taking a secondary consort was not, in itself, a great matter. But everyone knew my reputation for jealousy. To request a 4th consort right before a grand wedding was clearly a slap in the face to the Li household. If the Qian emperor truly cared for the crown prince, he would have handled it quietly, not aired it publicly, and certainly not dragged our female families to this banquet. Gu Ming, of course, understood the emperor's intent. He knew me well. He feared I might act and kill Lu Rue, yet he trusted he had me in hand. In the previous life his guess had been right. I made a scene and he coolly told me, "If you cannot tolerate her, then break the engagement." I was forced to retreat, even pushing back when my ancestral grandfather sought to act in my stead at court. Outwardly it seemed I had been overcome by love, but in truth every move was calculated. He had known everyone's thoughts as if holding them in his palm. I had underestimated Gu Ming in the last life. I drained my cup without a word. The hall sank into silence. Lu Rue crawled toward me and knelt, sobbing. "Miss Li, I do not intend to compete with you. If you permit, I will be your handmaid, your servant, only please allow me to remain by the crown prince's side. I looked up at Lu Rue. The woman's beauty tilted hearts, slender and delicate, a willow-like waist, every frown, every smile stirred the impulse to shelter her. Rumor in the capital had it that on the freezing frontier, where the north wind cut to the bone and the Lu household lacked firewood, Lu Rue had stripped herself and used her body to warm Gu Ming. Such a devoted beauty, so wholly given to him, no wonder in the last life Gu Ming endured, schemed, and waited for years for the sake of vengeance. I smiled faintly. Really? Our household lacks a maid. Why not? Today Lu Miss follows me back to the Li residence. The Li household has never mistreated servants. If later she enters the Eastern Palace as a domestic attendant, that will do no harm. Lu Rue's face flushed crimson, her lips trembled and she stammered, unable to form words. She dared not answer, yet could not refuse. Anyone who could step into today's banquet surely was no fool, only the purpose had been exposed by me in front of everyone, and for a moment she could not hold on to her face. Gu Ming frowned, no longer polite, his voice cold. Li Yuan, Lu Rue saved your life, how can she be made a mere maid? She will be my secondary consort. The position of crown princess remains hers, do not make things hard for her. That single sentence struck like a smack in the middle of the banquet, nearly declaring outright that I was jealous and small-minded. My maternal grandfather could not bear to see me wronged and rose immediately to confront him. I pressed my grandfather's hand and smiled, replying, "A life-saving grace is a weighty debt. The crown prince is the pillar of the state, Lu Rue saved him and is therefore a great meritorious subject to our realm. Is the post of secondary consort really such a hardship? As I see it, better to give the place of principal crown princess to Lu Miss, and the engagement between the crown prince and myself ends here." The hall rocked. I lifted my cup and drained it, my gaze casually swept a dark corner where no one noticed, Prince Ning Guhong's seat. Lu Rue was the pawn Gu Hong had painstakingly arranged, step by step bringing her to stand beside Gu Ming. If her true identity were exposed at the right moment, it would become the fatal blow to utterly ruin Gu Ming's reputation. If in the previous life I had not discovered her true identity in time and silently removed her, then who would have finally ascended the throne, would have been uncertain. Gu Ming was briefly taken aback, then his face darkened and he said in a cold voice, "Just so long as she does not regret it. Father, if Li Yuan has taken the initiative to break the engagement, I beg you to permit me to marry Lu Rue and make her crown princess." The Qian emperor had not expected my reaction to be so extreme and immediately demanded the broken engagement. The court situation was now stable, the Qian emperor did not want unrest. He both scolded the crown prince and softened his tone. "Li Yuan, do not be angry. This ungrateful youth is only for a moment of folly. The marriage between you and the crown prince was arranged long ago by me and Grand Commander Li, how can it be made a jest? We will discuss this later." My maternal grandfather rose in anger, I gripped his hand and held him seated. Gu Ming looked at me, a hint of a smile flickered in his eyes. I smiled coldly inwardly. He thought, as expected, everything was within his plan. He assumed I would be angry for a moment and sooner or later compromise. My maternal grandfather at the banquet had said nothing, only drank with his head down. Others toasted him and he drank until drunk before the palace women led him from the hall. The carriage had long left the capital when my maternal grandfather suddenly sat up straight, looked at me for a long while, then opened his mouth slowly. "The crown prince is not the right match." This was not the first time my maternal grandfather had said such words to me, every time it ended in an earth-shaking quarrel. My mother died young, my father was on border duty year-round and we met only every few years. All the family's love had fallen on my grandfather's shoulders, and he could not tolerate seeing me suffer humiliation. My maternal grandfather was already old enough to retire. In the previous life, after Gu Ming took the throne, fearing that I would be oppressed in the inner court, my grandfather entrusted the tiger Tally to me to command 200,000 dragon guards, a gift he gave in confidence. But when the tally fell into Gu Ming's hands, it ultimately condemned my grandfather to endless disgrace. My eyes reddened. Grandfather reached out and patted my head, voice gentle. Enough, enough, I will not speak further. Only tonight you have truly taken a misstep. Once the court has set its course, there is no turning back. You have thrown yourself into the contest for the throne, there is no way to withdraw. Besides, your heart moved, and in the end the one disgraced will still be you, a fragile daughter. I quietly wiped my tears, understanding what my grandfather meant. Long ago I had used the engagement as the doorway into the game for power, to help Gu Ming secure the position of crown prince. The engagement was no longer a simple promise, it symbolized command over 200,000 dragon guards and 300,000 border troops belonging to the Li household. Gu Ming knew I would not dare break the engagement. The emperor certainly could not allow 500,000 troops to slip beyond control. I did not intend to tell my grandfather that Gu Ming was the one who killed my mother. His temper is hot, if he knew, he would ruin my plan. I only told him to rest assured, I would shoulder everything. In recent years, from the network of disciples to the forces under my grandfather's command, I had gradually taken them over. My maternal grandfather had become confident in my abilities and no longer asked much. That night I sent a card to the Suan Tavern, inviting Prince Ning. The next day I went to the rendezvous carrying a sprig of spring flowers. The tavern was closed to the street today. The keeper led us up to the highest floor and stopped before a door. I signaled the spring flowers to stay outside and pushed the door to enter. Prince Ning wore a robe of white and sat by the table burning incense and brewing tea, appearing relaxed and untroubled, though his method of making tea was all wrong. Precisely because of that, I had not sent the notice to the Ning prince's mansion, but to this tavern. In the previous life Prince Ning had hidden himself very deeply. Over 10 years the Suan Tavern had grown from a small shop into a prosperous establishment of gold and silver, yet in that time Prince Ning had never shown himself openly. It was only after his plot failed and he took his own life that the people under him revealed this place. Miss Li is indeed formidable. Even this little tavern of mine, earning a few humble coins, has been found out, said Prince Ning with a probing smile, uncertain how much I already knew. I didn't answer. I sat opposite him, emptied the tasteless tea he had brewed, and started again from scratch. Though born of a military family, my grandfather had me trained in everything, zither, chess, calligraphy, painting. Later, because Gu Ming loved tea, I studied it even more diligently. A thin layer of white steam drifted above the clear surface, wavering between us. I lifted the cup, took a small sip, and said calmly, Your Highness, it's time to fight for the throne. Prince Ning's gaze darkened for an instant, then curved into a smile. Miss Li, I've never competed for power. This tavern only makes me a few taels of silver, nothing more. The gentle tone was his second test. As long as he did not rebel, did not seek the throne, no one could touch him, not even the emperor. If all I had discovered was that this tavern belonged to him, he wouldn't have cared. I drew a folded list from my sleeve and placed it before him. One glance, and Prince Ning's face turned grim. It was the list of officials he secretly controlled. They held no high ranks, but every post was crucial. A long silence passed before he spoke. The famed Li girl's cunning truly lives up to its name. To uncover so much without a sound, impressive indeed. Yet even if you accuse me before father and the crown prince, as long as I discard these people, you still can't touch me. I smiled faintly, turning over his final card. You're right, as a prince, the emperor would never harm you. But what if he knew Lu Rui's true identity? Knew how she came to be beside the crown prince? Tell me, Your Highness, what would happen then? Prince Ning shot to his feet, striking the table so hard that cups shattered. His long, narrow eyes stared at me in shock. Leaning back in my chair, I rested my chin on one hand and watched him lazily. The child of the emperor and the eldest princess, supposed to have been wiped out 18 years ago, somehow ended up in your hands. And now you've sent her straight into the crown prince's embrace. Once she enters the Eastern Palace and her identity is exposed, will the crown prince still have a chance to ascend? You plan well, Your Highness. In the last life, had Lu Rue not grown too ambitious, trying to escape Ning's control and acting too soon, giving herself away so I could eliminate her first, Prince Ning might truly have succeeded. One can only say, man proposes, heaven disposes. Prince Ning, you miscalculated by a single step. He sat back down, voice hoarse. I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know this Lu Rue, nor any of these things. In a moment I'll report all this to the Emperor. I smiled softly. Cowardice may be shameless, but sometimes it works. Sacrificing one pawn to save oneself is always the wiser move. By revealing Lu Rue's identity first, his years of scheming would turn to ash, yet the Qian Emperor, desperate to cover up the scandal, would rush to silence the matter, call it a coincidence, and bury it deep. I stood, drew a sealed letter, and placed it on the table. I hope, Your Highness, that tonight you'll bring me the former nurse of the eldest princess. After that, everything will go according to my instructions. After all, Your Highness wouldn't want the Emperor to know why you lie awake each night, growing weaker by the day, would you? The exotic holy flower from the western region, and the agar wood from the northern sea that you presented to the Emperor, what a perfect pair they make. No one's noticed. Yet. Leaving the tavern, I returned to the Li residence with Chunhua. Prince Ning sat frozen for a long time. By evening, the person I had requested was delivered. The intelligent always know how to read the wind. Within 2 days, rumors spread like wildfire from around the Suan Tavern, tales of the Crown Prince's unmatched talent in both war and governance, the destined ruler of the age. Every tavern and tea-house buzzed with storytellers weaving Lu Rue's rescue of the Crown Prince on the battlefield into a legend sung across the capital's streets and alleys. 2 days later, at the Great Court Assembly, the ministers gathered to discuss rewards for the generals who had triumphed in the northern campaign. The most eager to speak were Gu Ming's men, striving to secure the Crown Prince's military merits. In the Great Qian dynasty, there was an ancestral rule: one who wished to ascend the throne must first earn military accomplishment. But just then, a censor, an official from Prince Ning's maternal clan, stood out and presented a memorial accusing the Crown Prince of violating military law by bringing a woman into the army. Immediately after, more than a dozen officials joined in the impeachment, and the entire court was thrown into turmoil. My maternal grandfather remained silent, and so did the men under his command. 2 factions quarreled violently, shaking the golden pillars of the court. The Qian Emperor glanced briefly at Prince Ning, then took the opportunity to retreat from the confrontation and declared that the discussion on granting the Crown Prince's merits would be postponed. When the Crown Prince left court, his face was heavy as iron. He wanted to approach my grandfather to smooth things over, but was not received with kindness. In the following assemblies, the dispute over his military achievements continued. What should have been a sealed matter was now suspended in limbo, tugged between 2 factions and the Emperor's deliberate maneuvering, like a castle built in the clouds. In contrast, Prince Ning presented his design for a repeating crossbow. He not only produced the blueprint but also brought forth a working prototype crafted by the Ministry of Works. Its range surpassed all existing bows, and it could fire 10 bolts in succession. Once fully equipped across the army, it would greatly amplify the empire's military power. The Qian Emperor was delighted and immediately rewarded Prince Ning with 1,000 additional households of land revenue, granting him full authority to oversee the weapons production and deployment. This time, Prince Ning no longer concealed himself, he had openly entered the contest for the throne. Gu Ming had eyes within the Li household, a maid named Lu Ying from my courtyard. I devised a plan, making Lu Ying accidentally break the jade hairpin Gu Ming had gifted me when I was 16. I had always treasured that hairpin and never parted from it. I did not leave the house for days, while Lu Ying was punished and sent to the kitchens. For a month, Gu Ming heard nothing from me. Unable to bear it, he came in person. I instructed Chunhua to tell him I was unwell and refused to meet. As expected, Gu Ming secretly handed Chunhua a gold ingot, hoping to learn how I had been. Chunhua glanced around to ensure no one was near, then whispered. My lady has been washing her face with tears these days. Even the Grand Commander's persuasion is useless. She won't speak with any of us. Each day she sends people to inquire about the Crown Prince's doings. A few days ago, when someone said there was a storyteller spreading tales of the Crown Prince and Miss Lu, my lady had the stall smashed to pieces. You know her temper, Your High, she caught herself, you know how stubborn she is. She's just sulking. Perhaps if Your Highness comes to comfort her. Satisfied by the report, Gu Ming left reassured. When Chunhua returned, she offered me the gold. I rewarded her further and told her to keep it. In a few years, I would marry her off with it. Believing victory in hand, Gu Ming began openly appearing with Lu Rue at all manner of gatherings. The court officials still hesitated to pick sides, but the noble ladies in the capital had no such restraint. Seeing Gu Ming's clear intent to elevate Lu Rue as crown princess, the ladies of noble households scrambled to flatter her. Lu Rue was invited to garden parties and lake outings every few days. Wherever she went, she became the center of attention. Every glance, every compliment inflated her vanity to bursting. The next time I met Gu Ming was at the 70th birthday banquet of Minister of Revenue Lu. All the prominent figures of the capital were present. The seats for the women were arranged at the lakeside pavilion in the rear garden of the Lu residence. When I arrived, Lu Rue sat at the center, flanked by two fourth-rank ladies, their hands warmly clasping hers. A circle of noble women surrounded them, chattering cheerfully. Yet as I stepped inside, the laughter died down instantly. The two ladies let go of Lu Rue's hands and rose to greet me. I returned their courtesy, then chose a seat at random. None of them dared resume their intimacy with her. My maternal grandfather still held office. Even if I had broken off the engagement with the Crown Prince, I remained someone none of them dared to cross. A group of golden orioles fluttered away, revealing Lu Rue's face twisted in barely concealed displeasure. I looked at her steadily until she had no choice but to stand and bow. Commoner Lu Rue greets Miss Li. I nodded and stepped into the pavilion. The noble women made way at once, and one sharp-eyed lady pulled out a chair, the very one Lu Rue had just occupied, for me to sit. All other seats were taken. Lu Rue could not openly fight for it. She had to stand behind me beside Chunhua, looking for all the world like a maidservant. I sipped a cup of floral tea and said softly, Miss Lu, have you grown accustomed to life in the capital? Lu Rue smiled sweetly, her voice gentle, though her words carried a subtle barb. I was born in a peasant household. Never in my life have I seen such splendor as the capital's. His Highness the Crown Prince has been so kind, Lu Rue said with a soft smile. He often takes me out to see the city. Thanks to him, I'm slowly becoming familiar with the capital. A single line, but its intent was clear enough, a reminder that Gu Ming had been constantly by her side of late. I sneered inwardly but kept my expression calm. Then Miss Lu should make haste to learn her way around. Otherwise, when you marry into the Eastern Palace as Crown Princess and happen to lose your way in the capital, wouldn't that be quite embarrassing? Lu Rue feigned alarm. I am but a humble commoner, how would I dare contend for the position of Crown Princess with Miss Li? That day His Highness was merely acting in a moment of anger. I'll speak to him, and surely His Highness and Miss Li will be reconciled as before. Her words claimed humility, yet her tone was that of a mistress talking about taking in a concubine. In less than 2 months, her skill with words had advanced remarkably. She was no longer the timid little rabbit hiding behind Gu Ming at the imperial banquet. Is that so? I cast her a cool glance and said lazily. I saw the huashu on your head and thought you had already moved into the Eastern Palace. The huashu, the jeweled crown of flowers, symbolized a woman's rank. The Empress wore 12, the Crown Princess 9. Only then did the noble ladies notice what adorned Lu Rue's hair, a crown of 9 flowers. Heavens, how could a commoner wear such a thing? 9 flowers belonged to the crown princess. Wearing it by mistake was a grave offense, one punishable by death. That looks exactly like the one the Empress once prepared for Miss Li, someone whispered. I remember seeing it at a banquet. The words made everyone realize the enormity of what they were seeing. Lu Rue's face turned deathly pale. I smiled without speaking. That crown had been personally prepared for me by the Empress, publicly displayed for all to see. It had been stored securely in the Eastern Palace, to be presented to me on my wedding day with the Crown Prince. Even if the engagement had been dissolved, which it had not, the betrothal gifts should have been returned to the palace, not pilfered by another. To touch another's wedding dowry was taboo even among commoners. Within the imperial family, it was a capital crime. Lu Rue's face flushed scarlet, her lips trembling wordlessly. The maid from the Eastern Palace who had accompanied her sensed the danger and quietly slipped out, likely to fetch help. I flicked my gaze toward Chunhua. She understood at once, stepped forward, and slapped Lu Rue hard across the face. How bold of you, thieving wench. A peasant used to picking pockets, and now you dare steal my lady's betrothal gift. Chunhua's voice cracked like a whip, cutting straight through Lu Rue's dignity. The men's banquet was not far from the women's quarters. Hearing the commotion, Gu Ming rushed over. At the sight of him, Lu Rue went limp and collapsed. Before anyone could help her, she forced herself up and fell to her knees before me, kowtowing again and again until her forehead nearly split. Miss Li, she sobbed, this humble woman never intended to vie for the position of crown princess, nor did I know this crown belonged to you. I beg your forgiveness, please be merciful and spare me just this once. That one phrase, be merciful, turned Gu Ming's face to ice. He strode forward, lifting her up. When he saw the distinct red mark on her cheek, his eyes darkened. Whatever he had planned to say to me vanished completely. He looked at me, angered, and snapped coldly. Li Yuan, why did you strike Lu Rue? If you were displeased, you could have come to me directly. Why take it out on a weak woman? With such a vicious heart, how can you hope to be a crown princess? I had been waiting for that line. My lips curved into a frigid smile. At last, he had shown his true face. I set my teacup down heavily and rose, beginning my performance. Crown princess. Since when can a crown prince have 2 crown princesses? This 9-flower crown was prepared for me by the Empress herself, yet today it appears on another woman's head. Are you expecting me, your rightful consort, to behave like those legendary women who shared their beloved men or died for them without complaint? Gu Ming's gaze flickered toward the crown on Lu Rue's head, his expression hard as frost. It's only an ornament. Lu Rue knows nothing. Someone in the Eastern Palace must have taken it by mistake. I will investigate and give you an explanation. I laughed, each word cutting like a blade across his face. The Crown Prince truly is protective. Yet I've never heard of any servant bold enough to unlock a sealed chest of betrothal gifts and take what's inside. Even in the Eastern Palace, such impudence is not permitted. Gu Ming had wanted to shift the blame to a servant, an easy fix, a quiet punishment, and the matter would end there. He knew perfectly well that Lu Rue had overstepped, but by now right and wrong no longer mattered. This was a gamble, a confrontation between him and me. If he bowed his head today, Lu Rue would never set foot in the Eastern Palace again. But if he wished to keep her, he would have to sacrifice me, or force me to yield. He wanted Lu Rue. He also wanted the Li family's power. Fish in bear's paw, he wanted both. Given the current political climate, the emperor's wary attitude, my past compromises, and the whispers Chunhua had fed him, Gu Ming saw a path to have it all. To make me bow. Because Gu Ming was greedy. And to make a greedy man bite the hook, you need not sweeten the bait, only remove his fear. Lu Rue was still kneeling. Suddenly, she threw herself at Gu Ming's feet, tears streaming like rain. Your Highness, please don't quarrel with Miss Li anymore. It's all my fault, I have offended her. I'll use my life to atone. Before anyone could react, she rose and dashed straight toward the lake behind the garden. Gu Ming barely hesitated before leaping in after her. The courtyard erupted into chaos. The servants attending the noble ladies panicked and fled to call for help. Within moments, word of someone falling into the lake spread through the entire residence. The male guests in the front hall rushed toward the garden, fearing the victim might be one of their own. 70 years old, a venerable age in Great Qian. Minister of Revenue Liu had always been meticulous in his duties, managing the empire's finances with order and care. To have the emperor himself attend his birthday was the pinnacle of honor. My grandfather and Prince Ning, both recently gaining prominence in court, accompanied the emperor to the rear garden. A servant hurried alongside, explaining the situation. When the three arrived, they saw Gu Ming climbing from the water, Lu Rue limp in his arms. He draped his cloak around her shoulders and shouted anxiously, "Xiang Dai." A maid broke through the crowd. Before joining the Eastern Palace, she had been trained in medicine by an imperial physician. She lifted Lu Rue, pressed a few points along her back, and Lu Rue coughed up a mouthful of water before slowly regaining consciousness. Gu Ming urged Xiang Dai to check her pulse. After a moment, the maid's expression turned strange. "Your Highness. Miss Lu is fine. But, she is with child. Judging by the pulse, at least over 2 months. What? Pregnant. Unwed and already pregnant. TSK. How splendid. The crown princess not yet wed, while another woman carries his child. And this was a royal heir. The emperor could never allow imperial blood to exist outside the palace. This slap landed squarely across my grandfather's face. His expression darkened to steel, eyes sharp as a tiger's, fixed on the two kneeling figures. Ungrateful wretch. The Qian emperor hurled his jade fan straight at Gu Ming's head. The jade handle struck his brow, cracking it open, blood slid down his temple. All those years of studying virtue and decorum with the scholars, did you feed them to the dogs? Gu Ming knelt low, trembling, unable to utter a word. Lu Rue glanced once at Xiang Dai, then suddenly threw herself forward, shielding Gu Ming. Your Majesty, it was all my fault. His Highness bears no blame. If punishment must come, let it fall on me. Gu Ming was so moved he nearly wept. He pulled her behind him, crying. Father. Lu Rue and I are truly in love. Please, grant us your blessing. My grandfather's face was black as soot. Blessing. What blessing? Shall my granddaughter be made a concubine instead? He turned toward the emperor. Your Majesty, since the crown prince has given away the betrothal gift prepared by the empress to this woman, and now she bears royal blood, then the engagement between my granddaughter and the crown prince, let it be annulled. Gu Ming looked at me, his lips parted, wanting to speak, but no sound came out. The emperor fell silent, his expression shifting endlessly. So then, he murmured, what place should Miss Li now hold? I knew what he was weighing. The great Qian army numbered 800,000, yet apart from scattered garrisons, only 700,000 were truly in command. Of those, 200,000 imperial guards were in the emperor's hands. The remaining 500,000 were under my grandfather and father's control. Since ascending the throne, the Qian emperor had long sought to reclaim that power. But the northern front remained unstable, and with my father stationed there, he had no way to do it. Thus, my engagement to Gu Ming was the bloodless path, the silent bridge by which the emperor could take back full military command. At first, when the crown prince brought Lu Rue back, the emperor had planned to smooth things over, to force me into compromise. Even if I did not yield, he believed Lu Rue could be quietly erased. But now, Lu Rue was pregnant. With so many ministers and noble ladies present, the scandal could no longer be hidden. She was already known as the woman who had saved the crown prince's life, praised throughout the capital for her virtue. If Gu Ming did not marry her now, he would be condemned as ungrateful. And a crown prince deemed ungrateful could hardly keep his throne. My grandfather would never allow me to remain engaged to a man so tainted. And so, the power that had once fallen neatly into our grasp slipped away. Yet if he married her, it would be with the betrothal gifts meant for me. The engagement was already decreed, and if Lu Rue entered the Eastern Palace first, my grandfather's request to annul the match would be entirely justified. Even if the Qian Emperor was unwilling, he could not object. Either way, the power was lost. Gu Ming spoke up. Father, Lu Rue saved my life. And Li Yuan is the woman I love most deeply. I cannot wrong either of them. If Miss Li is willing, please allow me to marry them both, Li Yuan as crown princess, Lu Rue as consort. If she refuses, then let the engagement be dissolved. He glanced at me, his eyes heavy with meaning. Refuse, and I'll cast you aside without hesitation. With so many witnesses, an annulled engagement would never be restored. I laughed bitterly inside, lowered my face to the table, and began to sob like a wounded maiden, every note perfectly measured. At that moment, another voice rang out. Prince Ning. He stepped forward, his words sharp as a blade. Your Highness, how can you force Miss Li in such a way? If she consents under pressure, what dignity will she have left in the capital? Then he dropped to one knee before the emperor. Father, I have long admired Miss Li. If the crown prince refuses to wed her, I beg permission to take her as my wife. Gu Ming's face changed at once. He had never expected Prince Ning to intervene now. If Prince Ning were to marry me, the position of crown prince would no longer be secure. The Qian Emperor, however, looked relieved. If the crown prince could not wed her, then Prince Ning would. Either way, the Li family's military power would return to imperial hands. One son held the title. The other would hold the army. Let the two vie with each other, the emperor would remain supreme. The Grand Commander's opinion. The emperor asked. I rose quickly, panic in my voice. Grandfather. Gu Ming's eyes flickered with hope. If I refused Prince Ning's proposal, the matter would turn into farce, and the engagement might still survive. My grandfather slammed his cane against the ground with a thunderous crack. Silence. I'm not dead yet. Since when does my granddaughter's marriage await your permission? He turned to the servant. Chunhua, take the young lady home. Then he bowed to the emperor. If Prince Ning is truly sincere, this old man would gladly find a good husband for his granddaughter. I shall return at once to make the proper preparations and select an auspicious day for the wedding. The emperor beamed and immediately issued his decree. So be it. The engagement between the crown prince and Miss Li is annulled. Lu Rue shall be named crown princess, and the wedding day will be chosen at once. When the emperor and my grandfather left, Gu Ming stood slowly, his eyes cold as ice as he glared at Prince Ning. Ninth brother, do you mean to challenge me? All the capital knows Li Yuan's heart belongs to me. Be careful lest you be struck by your own scheme. Prince Ning folded his hands and smiled faintly. You flatter me, Your Highness. I simply could not bear to watch Miss Li suffer such humiliation. She is intelligent, capable, and unmatched in wit. My admiration is long-standing. That night, Xiang Dai slipped through the back gate of the Li residence and crept into my chambers. Miss, she whispered breathlessly, you won't believe it. That vile Lu Rue, she spent the day pretending to be meek at the Lu residence, but the moment the decree was issued, she rushed back to the Eastern Palace. She had the chests of your betrothal gifts opened, your wedding robes, phoenix crown, and jewelry. She wore them all, one by one, and stood before the bronze mirror, turning this way and that, admiring herself. When a palace maid called her Miss Lu, she slapped her across the face and declared, from this day on, call me Crown Princess. I poured Xiang Dai a cup of tea myself. She took it, trembling, too frightened to drink. You've endured much in the Eastern Palace these years, I said quietly. Your brother has done well in the army. He's to be promoted to captain soon. In a few days, I'll have him transferred back to the capital, so that you siblings may reunite. Tears filled her eyes as she dropped to her knees, choking out her thanks. Gu Ming had spies in the Li residence, and naturally, I had mine in the Eastern Palace. Xiang Dai was one of them. After she left, Prince Ning emerged from the shadows of the courtyard, clapping softly. Miss Li, he said, his tone half in awe, you truly see 10 steps ahead. Your eyes and hands reach everywhere, even the steward of the Eastern Palace answers to you. So the entire play today, Prince Ning said quietly, was directed by you, wasn't it? Xiang Dai had always been cautious and clever. Under my guidance, she had devised many useful stratagems and won Gu Ming's trust, becoming his hidden steward within the Eastern Palace. Lu Rui, on the other hand, was a woman driven by vanity and desire, skilled only in feigning weakness. She didn't know her true parentage, nor that the one pulling her strings from behind was Prince Ning. But that hardly mattered. She wanted, above all, to free herself from control. I had known she was pregnant a month earlier and sent Prince Ning's secret letter into the Eastern Palace, warning her to withdraw, claiming the situation had changed. But once she conceived, she had her leverage. Not only did she refuse to retreat, she even silenced the messenger permanently. When the Liu household sent out invitations, I began crafting the scene that would unfold today. Once she was with child, there was no turning back. In Great Qian, the rule of the firstborn heir was carved into bone. A prince's concubine was still just a concubine, and Lu Rui could never bear to be one. The child in her womb was her only card. She couldn't destroy it, but if I showed softness, that card would lose its worth. So her only path forward was to force my hand, to drive me into refusal and make Gu Ming marry her. I had Xiang Dai deliberately leak word about the betrothal chests kept in the Eastern Palace. As expected, Lu Rui schemed to steal them, begging Xiang Dai for help. I lit a stick of incense and placed it in the burner. So His Highness Prince Ning enjoys climbing walls, does he? If you were caught and handed over to the magistrate, the capital would have quite a story to tell. Prince Ning gave a faint laugh. No magistrate would dare arrest me. But I've thought long and hard and can't make sense of you, so I risked coming here to ask. Miss Li, what is it you truly want? Do you truly mean to take revenge on the Crown Prince? I clapped my hands. Chunhua entered, dragging a maid forward and forcing her to kneel. What I intend is none of your highness's concern. Take this one back with you. But only this once. If your highness has time to snoop around the Li residence, perhaps you'd better spend it considering how to challenge the Crown Prince instead. Prince Ning's smile froze. He hadn't expected that the spy he'd planted in the Li household had already fallen into my hands. The situation for Prince Ning had become awkward. Court officials believed he was already under my grandfather's patronage. Combined with his own faction, his apparent strength on the surface even surpassed that of the Crown Prince. But he knew better, it was all an illusion. The Qian Emperor didn't know the full truth, but as a ruler, he would never grant Prince Ning more power. And from now on, Gu Ming would see him as a thorn in the flesh. To survive in this swamp of power and deceit, Prince Ning had only one choice, to cling tightly to the Li family. To put it plainly, from this day forth, Prince Ning could only obey. The wedding of Gu Ming and Lu Rui was set for 1 month later. Her belly could not wait much longer, a month was already too rushed for preparations. In court, Prince Ning began openly opposing Gu Ming. With my grandfather's men behind him, Gu Ming suffered defeat after defeat. Rumors of replacing the Crown Prince spread through the capital, but the Qian Emperor maintained silence, pretending not to hear, feigning balance. During that time, Gu Ming tried several times to visit the Li residence, but my grandfather blocked him each time. He sent letters instead, saying he regretted everything, begging me to reconsider Prince Ning's proposal, even invoking memories from when I was 7. I tossed the letter into the fire and told Chunhua to relay this message. I've always wanted to leave the house, but my grandfather forbids it. He wishes only to see me wed to Prince Ning. The day before that marriage was to take place was the day Lu Rui would be officially conferred the title of Crown Princess. The palace sent invitations to all the great families for the ceremony, and I attended alongside my grandfather. Right at the palace gates, I came face to face with Gu Ming and Lu Rui. Because the preparations were rushed, the palace had no time to make a new ceremonial gown for her. Instead, they took the very betrothal robe the empress had once prepared for me, and gave it to her. That day, Lu Rui wore the full ceremonial attire of a crown princess. A 9-flower coronet gleamed on her head. When she saw me, she didn't say a word, just lifted a hand to touch her hair, her eyes glinting with smug challenge, as if to declare, "I am the crown princess now." I glanced at them both, meaning to pass and follow my grandfather into the hall. But Gu Ming stepped in front of me, blocking the way. I told my grandfather to go ahead. He shot the crown prince a cold look, snorted faintly, and turned to enter the palace. "Li Yuan," Gu Ming said softly, "what happened the other day was my fault. I wronged you. Don't throw your life away out of spite." My eyes reddened. I looked past him, at Lu Rui standing behind, my voice thick with resentment. "And what then? Does your highness wish me to enter the Eastern Palace as a concubine? Would you humiliate me that far?" Gu Ming mistook my words for lingering affection, hope flared in his eyes. He hurried to speak. "From the age of 7, we've shared a bond. What happened before was my moment of foolishness. I see clearly now. Li Yuan, annul your betrothal to Prince Ning. In a few days, I'll petition father to bring you into the palace as my consort. Once things settle, I'll elevate you to crown princess. As for Lu Rui, she's not suited to manage the Eastern Palace. When I ascend the throne, I'll make her empress instead. How about that?" "Your highness." Lu Rui's voice cracked. She stared at him in disbelief. The crown prince who had once defied the Grand Commander's household for her sake now stood before her, offering the position of crown princess to another. Tears spilled down her cheeks in a torrent. But Gu Ming no longer cared to comfort her. His eyes were locked on me, desperate for my answer. Because if I refused him, that throne of his might well slip away too. "Your highness," a calm voice interrupted from behind, "today is the crown princess's investiture ceremony. To still be entangled with your brother's betrothed, isn't that unbecoming of decorum?" The words fell like a blade of ice. Prince Ning stepped forward, placing himself between us. Enemies meeting face to face, of course the air crackled with fury. "Gu Hong," Gu Ming spat, "you haven't even married yet. You know well that Li Yuan and I have been bound by affection for years. You seek her hand only to steal power from the Grand Commander's household. Do you truly think that will let you seize my throne?" Prince Ning didn't anger, he smiled faintly. "How strange, your highness. I never forced you to annul anything. All I ask is that you remember your station." Then he turned to me. "Li Yuan, we should go in. Let's not keep the Grand Commander waiting." He took my hand and led me toward the palace. "Li Yuan." Gu Ming's voice cracked behind us. "You'd really help him stand against me. Have you forgotten? I once risked my life to save you." I faltered for half a step. My gaze went cold. But I still followed Prince Ning forward. To Gu Ming, it looked as if I had wavered, his words had reached me, but that Ning had dragged me away. Regret, tinged with a flicker of hope, took root in his chest. Behind us, Lu Rui's weeping grew louder, mournful and shrill. "If your highness no longer wants me as crown princess, then give the title to Miss Li instead." Gu Ming scowled, his temper snapping. "If you don't wish to be crown princess, then go to father yourself and annul the decree. All you ever do is cry. Who are you crying for?" Lu Rui froze, her face drained of color. She stared at Gu Ming as if seeing a stranger. Those tender promises of just days ago had become nothing but mockery. At the palace gates, many heard. Whispers rippled through the gathered courtiers and guests. People paused, turning to watch. Lu Rui's dignity shattered. She wanted to flee, but she couldn't bear to lose the title already in her grasp. So she stood silent, swallowing her humiliation. That night, Xiang Dai came to my residence with the news. Beside me, Chunhua laughed so hard she nearly fell from her chair, mocking Lu Rui for half the night and still not satisfied. 3 days after the investiture came the Crown Prince's wedding. The grand ceremony was held in the Eastern Palace, 3 days of banquets, doors open so even the common folk could witness the spectacle. And on that very day, the great play I had prepared for Gu Ming finally began its first act. For 3 days, he had waited outside the gates of the Li residence, hoping for a chance to speak with me. Lu Rui, consumed by jealousy and rage, personally went to drag him away, only to be scolded harshly by Gu Ming, who rebuked her for being unseemly and making a spectacle before the court. When the two of them, hands clasped around the red silk cord, walked past me into the hall, Lu Rui turned her head and smiled sweetly. "Miss Li, do remember to drink a few cups of wedding wine later." I smiled in return, a smile so calm it sent a chill straight into her bones. High above the ceremonial platform, the Qian Emperor sat upright, watching the pair bow to heaven, to earth, to the imperial ancestors. Only one bow remained, the final obeisance between husband and wife, to seal their marriage as complete. But just then, chaos erupted outside the Eastern Palace. A middle-aged woman burst in, shouting at the top of her lungs. "They cannot marry. They cannot marry. The crown princess is the daughter of the imperial princess." Someone inside had clearly cooperated, the palace guards were powerless to stop her. Before the eyes of hundreds of officials, she charged into the hall, crying, "The imperial princess. She had a daughter." A murmur rippled through the court. The imperial princess. Wasn't she long dead? How could she have had a child? But there were rumors years ago that she had disappeared for a time, pregnant out of wedlock. If this is true, then the crown prince has married his cousin within 3 generations, a grave violation of ritual law. Marvelous. Truly marvelous, what a scandal to behold. The Qian Emperor's face drained of color. Blood surged in his throat, but he swallowed it down with effort. His voice thundered through the hall. "Who is this madwoman spouting nonsense? Seize her at once." 2 squads of guards stepped forward, only to be blocked by 2 imperial censors. "Your Majesty," one said gravely, "today is the crown prince's wedding, all under heaven watch this ceremony. If the crown princess's lineage is tainted and stains the royal house, should we not first investigate? If her parentage is unclear, can this marriage proceed? And should the Ministry of Rights not be held accountable?" The emperor's fury was so great that his eyes nearly burst from their sockets. He longed to have the censors flayed alive, but he also knew, the censors' duty was to admonish even unto death. To kill them would only make martyrs of them. "You claim the crown princess is the imperial princess's daughter," he spat. "Have you proof?" The woman presented a sealed letter and a jade token. "I do. The imperial princess died in childbirth. Before her death, she left this letter, sealed with her personal mark. It states that her child bore a plum blossom birthmark on her back. If ever in danger, she was to bring this letter and token to seek aid within the palace." The censors examined the seal, it was indeed genuine. A palace maid was ordered to verify the claim. When Lu Rui was examined, she was found to bear a plum blossom birthmark precisely as described. The truth was undeniable, Lu Rui was the daughter of the late imperial princess. The Qian Emperor, who had struggled to maintain composure, suddenly spat a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Panic spread through the hall. Guards rushed him away to summon the imperial physicians. The crown prince's grand wedding, meant to glorify the dynasty, had turned into a public disgrace. The elder brother had married his cousin within 3 generations. His cousin, who was already pregnant before marriage. A humiliation so profound that Gu Ming's name was ruined beyond repair. Among the officials loyal to my grandfather, whispers began to spread. Fortunate indeed that Miss Yuan annulled the engagement, else the entire Li family would have been dragged down with him. My grandfather looked at me long and hard. At the Liu household's birthday banquet days ago, when I deliberately delayed the betrothal with Prince Ning, he had suspected I was plotting something. But he had not imagined that my plan would span such a wide board. I had never lifted a single finger, yet every move, from the first to the last, had unfolded exactly as I intended. My grandfather understood now. After a long silence, he led me back home. At the gate of the Li residence, he said simply, "Do as you wish." Though age had weighed on him, the fire in his blood had not dimmed. If his granddaughter wished to stir the heavens, he would stand beside her through the storm. Soon after, word came from the palace. Upon returning to his chambers, the Qian emperor decreed that the crown prince be confined within the eastern palace. Before he could rest, he coughed up 2 great mouthfuls of blood and fell into a coma. The imperial physician's diagnosis was grim. The emperor's heart and blood were in turmoil. Even in 10 or 15 days, he might not awaken. That night, the rain poured as though the heavens wept. The man who should have been confined within the eastern palace, Gu Ming, was instead kneeling before the Li residence gates, begging to see me. When Chenhua came to report, I was in the study practicing calligraphy. On the paper, I had written, "Use the ways of others, to govern them." "Let him kneel," I said. "A day and a night, then we'll see." Chenhua hesitated. "What if he leaves, my lady?" I blew lightly on the ink still glistening on the page, lifted my cup of chrysanthemum tea, and took a slow sip. "Where can he go?" "Back to the Eastern Palace." "Only to await his death." "Once His Majesty wakes, will that throne still belong to him? Would Prince Ning's faction ever spare him?" The next morning, the rain ceased. Gu Ming had knelt through the night and into the day under the blazing sun. His embroidered dragon robe was drenched, the golden threads dulled by mud and sweat. His face was pale, his lips cracked, dried mud clung to his hair and sleeves. He was still wearing his imperial robe, everyone who passed recognized him. And everyone knew why he was there. The man who had once forced the annulment of his betrothal to the Grand Commander's granddaughter, only to wed the daughter of the eldest princess, now stripped of favor, kneeling in disgrace before the same gates. Once arrogant, now pathetic, a perfect play of hypocrisy. Gu Ming bowed his head, letting his wet hair fall forward to hide his face from the gawking eyes around him. Another day passed. By midnight, Chenhua finally allowed him to enter through the back gate. The moment he stepped inside, Gu Ming fell to his knees before me. "Li Yuan, help me. Please. It was all my fault before. I was blinded by that woman's deceit. I hurt you. I wronged you." I watched him kneel, his forehead nearly to the floor. Satisfaction welled in my chest, but I hid it behind a mask of reluctant sympathy and conflict. Lu Rui's true identity had already been exposed, there was no turning back now. Too many witnesses, too public a scandal, it could not be buried. Once the emperor awakened, he would have to deal with it. A man tainted by such disgrace would never remain crown prince. And my grandfather, he would never let me interfere. Gu Ming understood all this. That was why he had knelt an entire day and night. He clutched at my sleeve, desperate. "Li Yuan, you're clever, you'll know what to do. Help me, and I'll give you everything. The title of crown princess, the throne itself, I'll give it all to you." He bowed his head, unaware of the chill that had already gathered in my eyes. Almost there. Soon enough, every debt between us would be repaid in full. Now that Prince Ning had my grandfather's backing, he would never let Gu Ming live. When the emperor regained consciousness, Prince Ning's faction would strike with full force. Unless what? Gu Ming asked anxiously. I lowered my voice, each word falling slow and deliberate. Unless the emperor never wakes again. The words crashed through the room like a thunderclap in winter. Gu Ming's eyes widened, then gleamed with sudden, wild hope. Yes, of course. The Eastern Palace still commands the 6 divisions. Within the capital, only the inner palace guards and the Tiong garrison remain. The tiger tally for the imperial guards is in the emperor's hand, and he lies unconscious. No one can command them now. If you stand with me, Li Yuan, the Grand Commander wouldn't dare oppose you openly. The Eastern Palace 6 divisions, 6,000 elite soldiers, are still mine. The western gates are under my general's watch. If I seize the palace, take the tiger tally, and the emperor never wakes, then the throne will be mine. Only one variable remain. The Tiong guards under my grandfather's command. Gu Ming crawled forward, his face streaked with tears and mud, pleading hoarsely. Li Yuan, I know you still care for me. If you help me, when I ascend the throne, I'll make you empress. If you refuse, then I'll die here tonight. What's the point of living a few more days? I was silent for a long while. Then I finally spoke, my voice calm as still water. Tomorrow, I'll make grandfather drunk. The Tiong guards won't move. Gu Ming's face lit with frantic joy. He stumbled to his feet, thanking me again and again before hurrying off to prepare. I looked down at the filthy handprint he'd left on my gown. Disgusting. I changed into fresh clothes. Then told Chunhua. Burn that gown. On the 3rd night after the Qian Emperor fell into a coma, Gu Ming led 6,000 elite soldiers of the Eastern Palace 6 divisions, all armored and armed, silently entering the palace through the western gate. Their movements were swift, precise, rehearsed. In a matter of moments, he had seized the emperor's chambers. With one stroke of his sword, he ended the life of the man who was both his father and his obstacle to the throne. But that night, he was not the only one moving in the shadows. Prince Ning, Gu Hong, had long planted his spies within both the Eastern Palace and the Li residence. He knew I might help Gu Ming bring the crown prince down, but I would never help him claim the throne. Gu Ming had no escape now. The only path left was mutual destruction. Among the imperial guards, Gu Hong had already bought loyalty. He bribed the commander of the southern gate, slipped his men past the watch, and under the pretext of palace defense, led 10,000 soldiers into the palace, waiting like the sparrow behind the mantis. The moment Gu Ming killed the emperor, Gu Hong's forces encircled him. Steel clashed in the night. Blood soaked the marble courtyards. The great palace of Qian turned into a slaughterhouse. Whoever survived would rule. In the end, Gu Hong triumphed. His troops outnumbered the rest, his blade pressed to Gu Ming's throat. At that very instant, I arrived, leading 50,000 Tiong guards into the palace. Gu Ming threw back his head and laughed madly. Ha! Li Yuan has come. Gu Hong, you're finished. Did you really think that marriage decree would save you? In the end, Li Yuan still chose me. Prince Ning leaned wearily against a stone pillar, bleeding yet smiling bitterly. Pitiful crown prince. Even now, you dream in daylight. You and I were both fish on the chopping block. But Gu Ming kept shouting, his voice cracked and desperate. No. Li Yuan came to save me. Li Yuan loves me. Once I take the throne, I'll kill every last one of your men. He looked up, eyes wild, searching my face for mercy. Yet when he saw the frost in my eyes, his laughter faltered. Li Yuan, it's me. Gu Ming. Don't you recognize me? I smiled faintly, lifted my hand, and gave the order. My voice sharp as a blade. Tiong guards, hear my command. The traitors Gu Ming and Gu Hong have conspired to murder His Majesty. Their crimes are unforgivable. Seize them all. When it was done, I went to the Eastern Palace. Lu Rue was still in her crown princess attire, disheveled and pale. The moment she saw me, she lunged forward like a madwoman. But the guards I brought held her down. She screamed, voice breaking. You. It's you. Li Yuan, you venomous wretch. Ha! Even if you've won, what of it? In history, the crown princess will still be me, Lu Rue, not you. How pitiful. Even now, she still didn't understand her place. From behind me, Xiang Dai approached and whispered. Miss. Chunhua smiled slightly. Well done. Lu Rue froze, staring at Xiang Dai. And then realization dawned. You betrayed me. Let me go. I am the daughter of the eldest princess. You dogs, I'll kill you all. I stepped closer, gently removed the 9-flower crown from her head. Held it in my palm, admiring its cold gleam. Lu Rue, I said softly. Do you even know who your real father is? Her eyes widened. It's the Qian Emperor. You were born of the Emperor and the eldest princess. A child of sin. Before your coronation, you still had a chance to live. You could have fled, married a common man, lived quietly in peace. But you were too greedy. I sent you a secret letter, urging you to leave the Eastern Palace. You ignored it. So now, don't blame me for being ruthless. Lu Rue's eyes bulged in horror, she screamed until her voice broke. It was you. Li Yuan. You serpent-hearted witch. I turned away and said coldly. Take her to the ancestral court. Her existence still has its uses. The matter of incest is not yet finished. In the imperial prison. Gu Ming, wearing prison garb, screamed, calling my name. Li Yuan. Is that you? You came to save me, didn't you? Yesterday there were so many people, you couldn't act then, could you? From the other cell Ning laughed loud. Gu Ming, were you still dreaming? You fell today because she arranged it step by step. Don't you see? Lu Rue was sent by me. Li Yuan knew all along, yet forced me to play along with her. Even the eldest princess's wedding disturbance was directed by her. Both you and I were pawns in her hands. Now the great Qian will soon take the surname Li. No, it can't be. Gu Ming collapsed to the ground, muttering like a man bereft of soul. Li Yuan loved me since childhood. Chunhua said after the broken engagement you cried all day in the residence. Li Yuan, say it, he's lying, right? I looked at him, the man who ruined my house and family, and smiled. Of course it's true. I had known Lu Rue's identity from the start. Xiang Dai was my agent. I already knew she was pregnant. I released the eldest princess's wet nurse. Chunhua, she is my maid. Did you think a little gold would make her betray me? Gu Ming roared. Why? Why did you harm me? Weren't you the one who personally set me on the path to become crown prince? Why? I leaned close, smiling softly as I spoke. Because you were the first to plot against me. When I was 7 you had me seized, you killed my mother, and expected the Li family to owe you their lives. Gu Ming, this debt is mine now. I, for my mother, will collect it slowly. Gu Ming, as if all his life force had been drained, slumped to the floor and mumbled. You knew, so you knew everything. I adjusted my sleeve and turned, leaving the prison. Rest easy, Gu Ming. I will not let you die quickly. Every debt will be paid, piece by piece. After the coup, the emperor died, the crown prince was destroyed, Ning was defeated. I found the tiger tally of the imperial guards and seized full control of the palace forces. I placed a young prince on the throne as a puppet. I had my grandfather conferred the title of Duke of the Pacified State, elevated to step into the hall, entering court without kowtowing, speaking without naming his title, bestowed 9 bestowments. 1 year later, Lu Rui's illicit origins were exposed. The imperial family name Gu rotted to its core. The young emperor abdicated in favor of my grandfather. My father returned from the frontier and became crown prince. They say, when my grandfather ascended, Gu Ming went mad. I ordered him bound in chains and left in the eastern vegetable market. From the highest eaves of the imperial palace one could see him, picking withered leaves to eat, ragged, humiliated, clinging to life for 4.5 years before he died. All causes and consequences spring from one word, greed. Sometimes I think, if Gu Ming had never set that game in motion, might he have lived a quiet life to the end? The end.